So this video is just going to quickly talk through some of the ways to interact with JupyterLab for people that aren't used to using Python. So this accompanies the other video about using the Enki portal. So if you're happy with Python, move on to that one. Otherwise, watch far enough through that to get to the point where you're in and then watch this video. So just very quickly, there might be certain cells that we don't want to run every time. For example, once we've pip installed vCal, we do not need to do this every time we run the notebook. So the way we flip between cells which will run and cells which are just ignored is using this hash symbol. So if it looks like this and it's black, or it has like these green and different colours, then that will mean it will run as you go through the notebook. Otherwise you can just add it in, and then if you press Shift Enter, which is a run command, it'll basically not do anything. The other way to run a cell is to highlight your cell and then go to this top Run Selected Cells and Advance. What you'll see is that when it has this sort of star symbol, that means it's thinking, and then the moment it replaces it with that number in brackets, it means it has run that cell. Some other things, so unlike MATLAB, Python doesn't automatically output things. So for example, if I run my file, you'll see that this cell has completed, but it hasn't actually told me anything about it. And the same with this SAT-P MagmaSat. It'll tell me it's working. This is just, we built this into vCal so you know how far through your calculations it is. But what you'll have to do if you want to look at this is just to make a new cell, which you can do with this plus button up here, and just paste it in and then Shift Enter, and then you'll get the output sort of as would automatically happen in MATLAB. If you then decide this is cluttering up your notebook and you don't want this cell anymore, you can just quickly press Cut Selected Cell and then it will disappear. What you can do is you can rearrange cells. So say for example, this cell which looks at the data I've loaded in should probably be next to my file. So I can drag it and put it here. And then you can drag them around like that. You can also put in little notes for yourself. This could be really useful for when you come back to your code in a few months' time. So what we do is we insert a new cell below, and automatically it will put this in as a code cell. But you can change this to be a markdown cell. And now you can use various things. So for example, hash is a high column heading, so you can say loading in data from Excel to remind you what this does. And you press Shift Enter and it runs. If you think this heading's a bit big, you can change sort of the hierarchy of the headings. So you can put a second one, it makes it sort of a lower level heading. What is also cool is anything you write in these markdown cells, you can write with LaTeX notations. We could do a proper CO2. Sorry, you don't actually need the dollar signs. Oh, no, maybe you do. Sorry. Like that. So yeah, basically anything you can write in LaTeX, you can do here. Again, we can cut this cell if we don't want it. Sometimes you will find that maybe it has crashed on a certain calculation, or you've ended up overwriting a previous variable somewhere in your notebook and you just want to sort of start from scratch. So the best way to do this is to go to the top to your kernel, and if it's sort of crashed and it's been crashed for like quite a few minutes and it's not printing anything, you can interrupt the kernel to hope to try and troubleshoot what's happening, or you can just full on restart the kernel, and I generally go for restart kernel and clear all outputs. What you can also do is say you know you want to run up to a particular part. So for example, the point where it loads in the data and prints it, you can go kernel, restart kernel and run up to selected cells. It will then ask, do you want to restart? You're going to lose all your variables. Yes, I do. And then it will run through, and it sort of tells you the status of what it's doing down here as well, which can be useful. Or you can do kernel, restart kernel, and it will run all the cells in your notebook, and that can be useful. If you've got a lot of calculations, you can just go a coffee at that point. Something that is worth knowing about JupyterLab is if you decide, say, that your file structure is a mess, as we all do a certain time into a project, and we want to make a new folder, and say we call this JupyterLab Examples. Okay, so I might want to move this notebook, let's just save it, into this folder. So I can cut it, and then I can paste it in here. So then if we run up to here, restart kernel and run all, oh no, sorry, kernel, restart and run up to selected cell. What we'll see is that it actually manages to load this Excel file even though it's no longer in the correct directory. And this is because JupyterLab effectively thinks that this notebook is still in its previous folder. So what you need to do to solve this is go to this circle with a square and find the relevant notebooks. This is called JupyterLab things, and shut it down. And this means you can then sort of go back to your notebook, and then if you restart the kernel, what you'll see now is that it gives me an error. And it says that this file is no longer found. If you go down to the bottom, no file in directory. And this is because my directory is now this new subfolder, which isn't where my Excel workbook I'm loading in is. So what you could do is you could either move the Excel workbook in that it's using with, or you can use sys and relative paths. I'm not going to discuss this here, but just so you're aware that moving this notebook really doesn't do anything until you shut it down, and then it will end up in its new location.